Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today we're going to take a look at who Alyssa Ashcroft really was. One of the most underrated and at the same time most important characters in the secret history of Resident Evil. She's not a soldier, a scientist, or a government agent. She's a journalist, an ordinary woman, with no military training, no bioweapons, and no support beyond her ethics, her determination, and her insatiable thirst for truth. Alyssa Ashcroft was one of the first to catch the stench behind Umbrella, one of the few who dared to approach the corrupt heart of Raccoon City, even when doing so meant risking everything. Armed only with a notebook, a pen, and a bravery few have ever shown, Alyssa came closer than anyone to exposing horrors that humanity was still not ready to face, long before the world even knew what the T-virus was. And although many have forgotten her over the years, her legacy still lives on. Not only in the articles she wrote, the testimonies she collected, or the truths she uncovered, but also in her daughter, a young woman who grew up under the shadow of that past, and who inherited more than just the Ashcroft name. She inherited the responsibility of not letting the world close its eyes again. That's why, in this video, I'll explain in detail the story and origins of Alyssa Ashcroft. To do that, I'll summarize her history within the Resident Evil universe. Then I'll talk about her physical appearance, her personality, and her remarkable abilities and known weaknesses. Alyssa Ashcroft was, long before the disaster that destroyed Raccoon City, a woman who didn't scare easily, a reporter by profession and by calling. Her instinct for uncovering the truth was as sharp as her competitive nature. In Resident Evil Outbreak, the first game where she appears, she's introduced as a journalist for the local city newspaper. But her story doesn't begin with chaos and infection. It begins in the newsroom, tirelessly investigating, writing articles about strange cases, and digging through Raccoon's dark corners to bring to light what others preferred to keep hidden. Official Capcom guides and in-game files describe her as a young, brilliant, curious reporter who hates to lose and who, at just 28 years old, had already earned a reputation among her peers for being direct, persistent, and sometimes troublesome. Her earliest known work before the Outbreak survives as playable documents in the Outbreak saga. In one of them, dated October 31st, 1996, Alyssa signs an article in the fictional Comet News newspaper reporting the discovery of a corpse in the Amaze River. Years later, on June 1st, 1998, just 3 months before the catastrophe, she published a report in Money Scoop magazine exposing a case of orchid smuggling at the city zoo. That scandal, while seemingly trivial, involved the very president of the zoo's board of directors and subtly pointed to the deeper corruption hidden behind Umbrella. In hindsight, these investigations were the prelude to something much bigger, confirming that Alyssa was already sniffing out the rot emanating from the city's very core. Then the disaster struck. By late September 1998, the T-virus had spread like invisible fire through Raccoon City. The streets began to fill with corpses that wouldn't stay dead. Chaos overtook every corner. In the midst of it all, Alyssa, far from fleeing, remained in the city, likely searching for more clues, perhaps not fully aware of the dangers. It was then that her role changed. From journalist, she became a survivor. In Resident Evil Outbreak, she becomes one of the 8 playable characters, and her personality remains intact. Brave, determined, with an uncontrollable need to know more, to understand what was truly happening. In the game's various scenarios, Alyssa is not just a victim of the Outbreak. She is a woman on a mission, armed with lockpicks, her signature tools, symbolizing her ability to open doors and, metaphorically, uncover secrets. She faces each new challenge with a mix of courage and journalistic instinct. She plays a role in key moments like the underground lab in Below Freezing Point, the horror-filled hospital in The Hive, and the burning nightmare of the hotel in Hellfire. In each of these chapters, Alyssa is more than a survivor. She's someone who observes, analyzes, and makes choices. And when the time comes to escape in the final chapter, End of the Road, she manages, at least in the official canon, to survive, not as someone who merely ran away, but as a woman who endured, who learned, and above all, who didn't forget. That strength is reaffirmed in Resident Evil, Outbreak File Number 2, which continues the story right where the previous game left off. Once again, Alyssa is a playable character, and her investigations prior to the outbreak continue to surface. In the Wild Things scenario, set in Raccoon Zoo, copies of her old articles can be found. The one about the corpse in the Amaze River, and the one about the orchids, both physically discoverable by the player. This is no coincidence. These documents reaffirm that Alyssa didn't arrive at the outbreak as just another civilian, but as someone who had already been digging into the system. Her investigations into Umbrella were no accident, and now, in the middle of the catastrophe, she's faced with the consequences of what she had begun to uncover. During the new scenarios, the subway in Underbelly, the police station in Desperate Times, and once again the train station in End of the Road, Alyssa continues to demonstrate her tenacity. If the player selects her, she uses garden shears as a weapon, reflecting her fast and direct style. If she isn't controlled, she may appear helping during key moments, or even as an infected in some alternate endings, which adds a layer of tragedy to her story when things don't go well. However, in the official route, Alyssa survives once again, and she doesn't just survive, she transforms. The canonical epilogue that unlocks if Alyssa successfully escapes at the end of Outbreak File Number 2 shows us a more intimate side of her. In a scene that blends relief with determination, she is seen training, lifting weights, pushing herself to become physically stronger. It's a brief but meaningful moment. Alyssa doesn't want to be a victim again. On the TV, news reports announce investigations into Umbrella, and on her table rests a copy of the Daily Advisor, the newspaper where she works, with one of her articles featured on the front page. What is BOW? Uncovering this horrifying secret project. That article represents much more than a professional achievement. It's the symbol of a journalist who not only survived one of the darkest events in the Resident Evil universe, but also exposed it. She faced it with the only weapon she had, the truth. That moment officially closes Alyssa's story in the main games, but her legacy doesn't end there. Years later, in Resident Evil 7, Biohazard, released in 2017, a small but powerful reference is discovered. In the DLC End of Zoe, a document can be found signed by a journalist named Alyssa Ashcroft. In it, she investigates a series of disappearances in Louisiana, a case closely tied to the main events of the game. This confirms that Alyssa continued her career as a reporter many years after the Raccoon City disaster, and that she became involved in other dangerous investigations. Some fan theories, based on in-game clues, suggest that Alyssa may have been murdered in a hotel called Wrenwood around 2016 under strange circumstances. Although this death has not been directly confirmed by Capcom, it remains one of the most widespread theories and reinforces the idea that Alyssa never stopped searching for the truth, no matter the risk. But perhaps the most impactful part of her legacy comes with the recent announcements related to Resident Evil 9, Requiem, officially revealed in 2025. In promotional materials and trailers for the game, the existence of Grace Ashcroft is confirmed, a young FBI agent investigating a new viral outbreak. Most importantly, Grace is Alyssa's daughter. The game portrays her facing not only the horrors of the present, but also the ghosts of the past, directly connected to the events of Raccoon City. The connection is not subtle. Grace carries her mother's last name, and Capcom's official sources establish that she is Alyssa's direct descendant, confirming two things: that Alyssa definitely survived, and that at some point after the outbreak, she started a family. This detail turns Alyssa into something more than just a survivor or a journalist. It makes her a symbol of legacy within the saga. A woman who not only fought, exposed, and endured, but who also left such a strong mark on history that her daughter continues what she started. So, even though Alyssa may no longer physically appear in the latest titles, her shadow still lingers. Her voice, that of a journalist determined to expose the truth at all costs, echoes through generations. And thus, with signed documents, memories that refuse to fade, and a daughter who picks up the torch, Alyssa Ashcroft becomes one of the most human and persistent figures in the Resident Evil universe. She had no special powers, no military training, but she had the most powerful weapon of all, the desire to uncover the truth and the courage to face the consequences. Alyssa Ashcroft always stood out from the crowd, not because of eccentricities or extravagance, but because of a firm and determined presence. Her sober and elegant style made her stand out in a subtle yet powerful way. Dark brown hair, cut just above the shoulders and styled with almost surgical precision, a reflection of her meticulous nature. Her sharp, inquisitive gaze seemed to scan every corner of a room in search of hidden truths, of clues invisible to the common eye. Despite the fatigue that could mark her face after so many days spent chasing the truth, her expression never lost its serenity or determination. As if, no matter how dangerous the story was, she had already decided to tell it. Her clothing spoke just as much as she did. Always formal, never flashy. Fitted blouses in neutral tones, pencil skirts or straight pants, low heels that would allow her to run if the situation required it, and a notepad or recorder in her bag. Her camera hung as if it were an extension of her body, ready to capture what others wished to keep hidden. During the events of Resident Evil Outbreak, Alyssa looks exactly like this. Professional, composed, resolute, an image that deeply contrasts with the chaos surrounding her. While others are merely trying to survive, she is trying to understand. In Resident Evil 9, her figure no longer appears on screen, but her presence is felt, almost like a persistent whisper among the ruins of Raccoon. Old photographs covered in dust, digital recordings corroded by time, and above all, the fragmented memories of her daughter Grace keep her memory alive. In a note found on a hidden hard drive, one can read, with ink blurred by the passing years, "Mom never stopped searching. Until the end, even when she knew she was being followed." The portrait that emerges of Alyssa is not that of a traditional heroine. She didn't carry weapons, didn't have a virus inside her, or any special training. Her power was the truth, and her trench was journalism. From there, she faced Umbrella with a courage that many wouldn't even dare to imagine. That was what made her truly dangerous. Alyssa Ashcroft was not just a survivor. She was a fighter, not because she fired guns or defeated monsters, but because she never stopped asking questions, even when no one wanted to hear them, even when it was safer to stay silent. Her obsession with knowing, with digging into what others wanted buried, was stronger than fear. From her early years as a reporter, Alyssa already had a reputation for never settling for official statements, for investigating on her own, for going further. But it was in Raccoon City where her spirit was truly forged. When rumors began about disappearances, illegal experiments, and a corporation with more power than the local government, she didn't flee or look away. On the contrary, she stepped into the darkness, with her eyes wide open. The viral outbreak, the deaths, the destruction of an entire city, none of it stopped her. Some non-canonical reports and expanded universe stories suggest that Alyssa wrote a manuscript titled The Price of Truth, Raccoon from the Inside, a book that was never published. Some believe it was destroyed, others say copies were confiscated by the government, or even by remnants of Umbrella. After the fall of Raccoon, Alyssa disappeared from public life. Some versions claim she changed her identity. Others, more unsettling, say she was silenced. Alyssa Ashcroft is not your typical Resident Evil heroine. She doesn't shoot, doesn't fight hand-to-hand, nor does she face BOWs with firearms. Her weapon is the truth. As an investigative journalist, Alyssa possesses an extraordinary analytical capacity. She can read between the lines, detect hidden connections, and find patterns even amid chaos. This ability made her a silent threat to organizations like Umbrella, who feared what she might reveal with nothing more than a notepad and a recorder in hand. Even though she lacks military training, Alyssa has a different kind of courage. She enters nightmare scenarios with no defense, but her determination to find answers. Her bravery comes from conviction, not from duty or a chain of command. Additionally, she has a network of contacts that allowed her to access documents, sources, and testimonies no government agent could obtain. She knew who to call, how to apply pressure, and where to find those others had given up for lost. But what is most impressive is her mental resilience. What she has witnessed could psychologically destroy anyone, but Alyssa managed to remain strong. Not even the deepest horror made her lose focus. She even learned to encode information in hidden language and visual keys. In Resident Evil 9, we discover that she left encrypted messages and carefully camouflaged clues so that her daughter, Grace Ashcroft, could continue what she couldn't finish. Her instinct for detecting lies was almost supernatural. She didn't need technology to know when someone was hiding something. She just had to observe. However, all of these strengths come with significant weaknesses. Alyssa is not built for combat. When faced with a biological threat, her first instinct isn't to fight, but to find a way out or document the situation. Moreover, her obsession with the truth can become dangerous. She doesn't know when to stop. Even if her life or her daughter's is at stake, she pushes forward, crossing lines that most would avoid. There's also her professional loneliness. Her work taught her to trust no one, which made her extremely independent, but also vulnerable. She faced colossal enemies alone, with no backup, no support. And of course, there's the emotional conflict with her daughter. Alyssa tried to protect Grace, but at the same time dragged her into a world of secrets, horrors, and conspiracies. In Resident Evil 9, this is reflected in the messages she left, laden with guilt, love, and veiled warnings. Physically, Alyssa has clear limitations. She's neither fast nor strong, which puts her at a disadvantage in extreme situations. Her only hope of survival lies in her intelligence, her surroundings, and her cunning. And finally, she left a trail. Her investigation did not go unnoticed. The files, the recordings, and the names she collected may be the key to revealing the truth, but they could also be used by those who want to silence her forever. Grace Ashcroft is the new face of horror in Resident Evil 9. The daughter of Alyssa, her life has been shrouded in shadows, marked by uncomfortable silences and half-truths. She grew up without clear answers about her mother's past, never fully understanding why Alyssa disappeared or how deep she had gone in her search for the truth. But when a new biological threat emerges and Umbrella's sins begin to resurface from the cracks of history, Grace is pulled into a conspiracy that, unbeknownst to her, had always placed her at its center. Exploring abandoned facilities, forgotten databases, and files protected by outdated security systems, Grace begins to uncover traces of her mother. Encrypted emails, voice recordings deteriorated by time, and even hidden notes referencing a second phase of experiments that were never made public. In those words, in those digital echoes, Alyssa speaks directly to her, not as a mother, but as a journalist, as someone who never stopped fighting. What initially seemed like a simple personal search transforms into something much bigger. Alyssa's legacy, her obsession with exposing the truth, slowly becomes Grace's inevitable mission. It's no longer just about finding answers about her mother, but about stopping the same cycle of horror from repeating itself. And now, in Resident Evil 9, that legacy is about to open a door that leads straight into the heart of a new kind of hell. One more silent, more sophisticated, more ruthless. One that not even Grace is prepared to face, but one she must confront if she hopes to finish what her mother started. And that's everything we know so far about Alyssa Ashcroft, one of the most intriguing and underrated figures in the Resident Evil universe. From her days as a journalist in Raccoon City to her mysterious disappearance and the unexpected legacy she left behind for her daughter Grace in the events of Resident Evil 9, Alyssa represents a different kind of resistance. Not with weapons, but with truth. An ordinary woman facing unimaginable horrors, determined to reveal what others tried to hide, even if it cost her life. Now I want to hear your thoughts. Did you already know Alyssa Ashcroft's story? Do you think she really survived the raccoon incident and purposely left clues for her daughter to follow in her footsteps? And what do you think about Grace's role in Resident Evil 9? Will she be able to finish what her mother started? Leave your answers in the comments, and let me know if you'd like to see a video focused entirely on Grace and her connection to the new biological experiments featured in this game. Thanks for joining me once again. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, share it with other Resident Evil fans, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my new videos.